Hi, John Beck here in the south of Spain at the Triumph 900 launch. And today, amazing day riding around the south of Spain. Couldn't have had better weather. The roads we were on, I swear I was questioning what they're even built for, because it's like a giant 200-kilometer motorcycle park, basically.
Looking for more exciting motorcycle travel, editorial, reviews, news, and resources for planning your next motorcycle tour? RoadRUNNER.
It was just an amazing ride, getting to test out. I was on the GT Pro, this bike here, all day, and I'm glad that I started on the road versus off-road. I'm more of an off-road person generally, but the more controlled environment of the pavement, I think, really allowed me to better appreciate the electronics and sort of get that dialed in. The ride modes, like most motorcycles, you just learn the interface, you can figure out how to switch them. How they make the bike behave was the key thing, and learning that on the road today was a great experience because, fortunately, one of the gripes that comes up a lot with electronics is the fact that each time you power cycle the bike with a key, you got to go through a menu dance to get things back and forth. This bike remembers essentially everything, with the one exception if you're in off-road mode. When you key cycle the bike, it will reset ABS. I can't honestly think of an exception to that in the modern era other than bikes a few years ago with the dongle that would remember those settings. But other than that, this bike, any mode is programmable, which is another benefit. Anything you do to any of the ride modes, park it, leave the bike for a month, turn it back on, it remembers everything. I had sort of a unintentional misstep that sort of helped things. I got on a bike with the understanding that everything had been sort of reset. Turns out the one I got on, there was a couple parameters that had been adjusted that hadn't been set back to sort of their baselines. And it was interesting because when I first got on the bike, first couple miles, maybe 10 miles or so, it honestly felt a little like it dived into turns too much. It felt a little bit kind of bouncy. It was just a little surprising because I've ridden the speed triples before. Previous years I've ridden the 800 XCA and XCX. So when I stopped, someone helped me go through the modes and was checking it. And it turns out I was set up with the preload for a rider plus passenger and luggage. So that was cranked up. The dampening was down in like pillow soft mode. So it was kind of wacky. Changed all that, set it up for single rider. I was able to get the damping set up on the screen in a way that it's awesome. You can actually adjust it on the fly in real time. And so as you're going down the road, there's a graph on the right-hand side, and you can basically click it up or down. It's kind of cool when you get to the top in sport mode. There's actually a couple extra clicks. It's like essentially the bike goes to 11. Completely changed the behavior of the bike. And that was just a very welcome surprise, getting on something and going, this kind of feels weird, and realizing it was just a matter of a few button clicks, and then the thing was magical. All those settings that I referred to earlier are saved every time the bike's powered off, again, with the exception of ABS in off-road mode. As far as changes on this bike, for anyone that's ridden all the way back to the 800 XCA, XCX, the major changes came with the introduction of the 900, of course. This year, it was referred to as a total redesign in a sense. It is and it isn't. It's the same familiar 900 you're used to, but what's great is the bike does produce more power, produces more torque, as to be expected with a new model. I definitely appreciated the way it applied that, because the torque hits at a lower RPM. To me, it made the motor just much more usable. The biggest surprise, the biggest benefit I think about all that is all the increases this bike experienced in power and performance were done within the existing package. In other words, there's no weight consequence to all these changes. In fact, I believe the only weight consequences are on the Rally Pro model, and that comes in with the bash plate, the crash bars, things like that, accessory things. So Triumph has what they refer to as inspiration kits, and essentially they're all the aftermarket accessories, and they're packaged together in bundles that you can choose. What I was referring to earlier about no weight consequence to the improvements, that's related to the changes in the motor. In other words, they changed the intake, they changed internals in the motor without increasing weight. The weight changes, if you're going to look at any, are in things like crash bars, bash plates, stuff like that. And again, that's mostly on the Rally Pro model, which I'll be riding tomorrow. So the changes for the current iteration of the 900, basically the way it was referred to is you get more. And essentially it's more power, it's more of everything. But that also includes more efficiency. They managed to get more power and more performance out of the motor and make it more efficient at the same time. The TFT as well on this bike is borrowed from the 1200 platform, so you're getting the same level of digital integration as the bigger brother. And I sometimes wonder, it's interesting. Triumph has been around now for more than 120 years. It was founded in 1902. So basically you're sitting on 120-year plus worth of technological development. And I sometimes wonder, does Moore's Law apply with the technology as it keeps increasing? But fortunately, what we're seeing now is things like what you experience in the 900 GT, the GT Pro, in that you got more power, you got more performance, you're also getting now more efficiency, you're getting more digital integration, and the experience that the bike is providing harkens back to all the models you can imagine leading up to this one. A couple other quick notes from today where we did experience some pretty chilly temperatures in the morning. It was about 4 degrees Celsius, and a couple benefits that I really like are the fact that the heated grip switch is right on the grips, so it's very obvious, easy to adjust. It also has a stock heated seat. That's one thing I've always noticed about the Triumph series going back to the 800s is the value in the package. What it includes just by default is pretty amazing. So the grips being heated, the seat being heated was a big benefit. I thought the windscreen would be as well. Personally, I like the windscreen in the low setting. It has a very easily adjustable system. You can do it with one hand. Personally, when it was, for my height, I'm 5'11", when it was in the high position, it kind of interferes with the field of vision. If you're doing a long touring day, a lot of highway, that sort of thing, I could see the benefit there. In this case, this was a full day. It was hard to remember a single stretch of straight road other than maybe a couple sections towards the very end of the day. Low setting worked better for me in that context. So day 2, we went off-road. I switched from riding the GT Pro yesterday on the pavement loop. Today got to switch to the Rally Pro and for the off-road loop. And I got to say, absolutely highlight, I mean 50% of the trip, but this was definitely the amazing part of the trip for me, just because I tend to be more towards the off-road side of things. And especially at the end of the day, we got to ride the Triumph Performance Center facility here. And aside from that, we had 2 pro riders with us. I didn't mention on day 1, we had Jeff Stanton. He's 6-time AMA motocross champ in the United States. So super nice guy, unbelievable rider. So it was amazing to see. It's always great to have people like that in your group because all the limitations you have in your head, you're riding with someone that just kind of blows those away, so you can actually see some of your questions being answered in other riders. Today at the training facility, we had Ivan Cervantes come and do his little show, and it was unbelievable. I mean, doing things that, you know, I probably will never hope to do on the bike. But it was inspiring because we got to do a lap after that, and I was half joking the entire time that I never found the limits of the suspension on this. We really didn't do any big hits. Great test of the suspension throughout the day I'll come back to. But at the training facility, I found the limits of the suspension. There was a couple good boosts and the camera crew got set up and all that. So had a couple flat landings. I was just told one of them I was about 6 feet in the air. And so coming down on a, you know, it's a middleweight adventure bike, but still a big motorcycle, and landing something like that flat, hard, makes an ugly noise, had earplugs in, ignorance is bliss. I don't remember it. But in the end, the test for me is my ankles didn't hurt, that sort of thing. So it was a flat landing, found the limits of the suspension, bike totally took it. Aside from that, getting to watch Ivan do his thing, oh, I didn't mention, he won the Baja Aragon Rally in Spain with a margin of over an hour, if I remember correctly. It was like not even a contest. And I asked today, what was done to the bike, blah, blah, blah. Bone stock, Rally Pro. So it's a capable bike, and it was nice to actually see that demonstrated and then get to try some of it at whatever skill level we each have. But throughout the day, the route itself was generally, it was gravel roads with bits of sand thrown in, parts that were chewed up, lots of cross ruts, stutter bumps, things like that, that really tested what I felt was the bump compliance of the suspension. It's definitely not harsh, but I would say it's firm, and I actually like that. It gave really good feedback. It wasn't wallowy at all. The initial part of the stroke, it felt like it was firm enough that I never really blew through to the second half unless, you know, you're doing these big boosts in the performance center area. The other surprising thing about this bike to me is on day 1, I felt the handling of the GT Pro it was unusual to me. It actually reminded me, maybe it's an odd reference, but to like the old BMW G650s from way back when, or even some of the early KTM LC4s, not the Adventure, but the LC4, LC4E models. They felt very raked out. They kind of like flopped into turns. And I felt a little bit of that with the GT Pro. And I wasn't sure if it's, is it cold tires? Because, we had like 4-degree temperatures in the morning. That bike and this bike share identical geometries. The frames are the same. The only difference is, the significant difference when you move to the Rally Pro, is you've got the different suspension and wheels. You've got 21 18-inch wheel set on this bike, so the bigger wheels. You've also got longer suspension, and just however they set it up. Oh, by the way, this one, the setup for it actually is the factory off-road settings. So whatever they dialed the clickers into, their recommended settings for off-road, that's what we had. And I asked what the weight for that was, and I believe it was 80 kilos, which translated to our side of the world is about 175 to 180 pounds. And I'm right in that range. I'm a little above that, about 185. But the bike felt perfect for me. And for whatever reason, be it I'm used to the larger wheel sets or the taller suspension or something, even on the road, even with the knobby tires, I felt much more confident on the Rally Pro. We didn't do a whole lot of road, but I did enough to feel the differences there. So that was kind of a game changer for me, because that was my big takeaway from yesterday, is being concerned, like, does this handle unusual enough that it wouldn't be like a preferred bike for me, or that sort of thing. But once I got it on the road and then off-road as well, seeing how it felt very familiar in all those situations, that increased my confidence a lot. The other thing regarding ride modes, and that's very important on this bike because the level of tech is so high. I mentioned in the road test that the TFT display on this is now borrowed from the 1200 platform. So it inherits all that technology, and all that interface. In the Rally Pro, you get off-road Pro mode. And that to me is another sort of game changer, because I kept asking questions. I was almost disbelieving the answers, because one of my first questions is, how do you shut everything off? And I'm not one of those people that says, oh yeah, the ride assistance, it's like you got to shut it all off to get a good bike. Some of the ABS and some of the traction control modes are so good now that honestly, I can't outride them. And I'm sure that's true of a lot of people. But I always want to know, can you shut it all off just so I can feel what the motor feels like, and I can know, even if it might be too much for me, I want to know, what it feels like. And I'm always confronted with that same thing we hear. It's like, yes, you can fully defeat the front, but the rear remains in an off-road ABS mode or whatever. There's always some percentage left there. And I've always heard that it's a legal requirement. In the Rally Pro, it still sounds funny to me, but you can actually completely defeat everything, and it even remembers your settings, which is crazy to me. Like, I'm so used to stuff resetting. It will remember your settings like most bikes if you use the kill switch. If you fully power cycle it, this bike has a unique feature that I'm not aware of on any other model in this class or any other class, in that when you shut the key off and turn it back on, by default, it's going to reactivate the ABS like most bikes will, or reactivate whatever mode, off-road mode has the off-road ABS. It'll remember that. In this case, what happens is when you power cycle it, turn it back on, it's back in road mode. But there's a little icon on the dash where, with 2 button pushes, it's really quick. You just hit the mode button and then you tick the selector button, and it says something to the effect of go to previous mode. So in other words, you're riding around all day in Off-Road Pro, which puts the power delivery in the off-road, actually the throttle response, I believe, is road. You can actually up that to sport if you want. I left it in the road setting. But Off-Road Pro does fully defeat ABS front and rear. So you're riding around in that mode all day long. You stop, shut the key off, turn it back on. The display will say road, but you'll have this additional icon. And with 2 button presses, you're right back in Off-Road Pro mode. So that was a very welcome feature. 99% of the time, I just used the kill switch, didn't have to worry about anything. But if I did, stop for lunch and I decided, it's probably wise to turn the key off, it was nice the fact that 2 button pushes and we're back on the road. My only little gripe, I think, is the TFT is quite slow compared to most bikes that I've ridden. I think the startup sequence is a bit long. Fortunately, you don't have to wait for the display to become alive. You can just turn it on right away, but you're riding with like things happening on the screen and waiting for it to sort of do stuff. The other thing is just a lot of the controls I noticed, even when you turn the key and you're waiting for stuff to happen when you hit the starter, there's a bit of a delay there as the computer's doing something. So just digital slowness, I guess, is the only thing. And it's a minor gripe. It's just something that I noticed. Beyond that, today also, I think I mentioned yesterday about the windscreen. I didn't even bother raising it today. I tested it a little bit yesterday, but honestly, it doesn't give me much buffeting. I'm 5'11". With the windscreen in the low position, you can definitely feel the air, but I didn't mind it. When you raise it, it is quite smooth, but for me, it kind of interferes with the field of vision, and especially if I'm off-road, I don't want that there. It's, this thing can be ridden like a dirt bike. I want to feel like a dirt bike. So I kept the windscreen down all the way. The seats, it has 2 positions. I didn't even check mine because I was told it was in the low position. It did feel quite low, but we were off-road and on such gnarly, twisty roads all day, we hardly sat down at all. So that's one thing I didn't actually check. Beyond that, the bar bend, I was told they rotated the bars a little bit back for us, which surprised me. Normally off-road, I like them a little bit forward. Whatever position they were in, they felt fine. The levers, I adjusted a little bit of that. Overall, the ergonomics of the bike, 0 complaints with. The other thing that surprised me too is the brake lever does have a simple, like one-handed, no tools required feature to adjust the heights. The biggest thing about it though, aside from the adjustment that I liked about it, is if you look at the GT Pro and the Rally Pro, they have totally different brake levers on them. And the GT Pro felt a little awkward to me all day because when I was putting my foot down, I like to ride with my feet kind of gripping into the bike a little bit. Your foot never hits the platform of the lever, it hits the armature of the lever, which is a lot higher. So it reminded me of like the first gen BMW 850s with a little tab on the brake lever. My foot kept hitting that instead. And when you get on this bike, the lever, it's a billet thing and it's positioned somehow closer to the case. You don't have that issue at all.
Going on about the 2024 Triumph Tiger 900 is easy to do. For me, especially the Rally Pro model. With its 3-cylinder power plant, this bike remains a unique outlier in the adventure bike segment, and this latest version makes it by far the most competitive Tiger yet. I'd like to thank Triumph Motorcycles for hosting an ideal experience getting to know the new Tiger 900 GT Pro and Tiger 900 Rally Pro. I hope this video is helpful in exploring these latest bikes from a company with a long history of adventure and exploration. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and hope to see you on the trail.